Please subscribe to our channel, Pacific Front Untold, and be sure to leave a comment after watching a video.
Here's an interview of First Lieutenant Max C. Kissel regarding the death of Doyle W. Waggoner. The questioner was Bernard J. McRory. Were you a prisoner of war?
Yes.
At what places were you held, and state the approximate dates?
I was captured by the Japanese on April 10, 1942, on Bataan. I was then taken to Camp O'Donnell, arriving there on April 17, 1942. I remained there until June 4, 1942, when I was transferred to Cabanatuan. I remained there until July 17, 1944, when I was transferred by boat to the Narumi War Prisoners Camp, Nagoya, Japan. I remained in this latter camp until our liberation on September 4, 1945.
What was your position at the Narumi War Prisoners Camp?
I was in charge of the American prisoners of war held at the Narumi War Prisoner Camp. The American prisoners of war held at that camp under my command totaled 199 men, with 2 officers other than myself. These officers were a medical corps officer and a chaplain.
State what you know about the mistreatment by the Japanese and the subsequent death of Doyle W. Waggoner.
Among the prisoners of war held at Narumi War Prisoners Camp was Doyle W. Waggoner, AOM-1C, U.S. Navy, formerly a member of the 16th NAB. On June 30, 1945, Waggoner attempted to escape from the quarters in which he was confined. He managed originally to avoid detection by the Japanese and hid in the rafters of the kitchen for a day and a night while the Japanese searched for him. In escaping, Waggoner had cut his neck, and some of the blood dripped on the floor of the kitchen. This attracted the attention of the British cooks, and finally resulted in Waggoner's apprehension. He was recaptured in the early part of the morning of July 2, 1945. Waggoner was then severely beaten by most of the Japanese camp personnel. He was hit with their fists, with slippers, and with other weapons, and was also kicked by them. Waggoner was then tied hand and foot by the Japanese and thrown on the ground in front of the camp guardhouse. Waggoner was tied with his hands behind his back and with the rope extending to his feet, so that if he moved hand or foot, he would cause himself severe pain. Waggoner was left lying in this position for 3 days and 3 nights, without food or water of any type. He was then untied and placed in solitary confinement. Waggoner was given his first food by the Japanese on or about July 5, 1945. His meal consisted of about 3 spoonfuls of rice and a small cup of tea. He was given this amount of food 3 times daily from that date until July 17, 1945, when he died. The Japanese would not permit our American doctor to see Waggoner before or after his death. A Japanese doctor was permitted to dress Waggoner's neck wound. However, our American doctor managed to surreptitiously examine Waggoner after his death and determined that his death was caused by the mistreatment which he had undergone and malnutrition.
Who was the American doctor who conducted this examination?
First Lieutenant Elak Schultz, ASNO 363264, 91st Bomb Squadron.
Were you a witness to this incident, as it is described?
Yes. In addition to the facts which I have related, I was personally beaten by Stosuji, a Japanese disciplinary sergeant. This beating continued for about 5 minutes and was severe and left me well bruised.
How do you know the amount of food that Waggoner received during this period?
I was told of this by the British mess sergeant at the camp, and I also personally saw the food as it was taken to Waggoner.
Who was responsible for the mistreatment and death of Waggoner?
I do not know who was actually responsible for this incident. The responsibility may have been assumed by the commandant, but he may have had his orders from higher authority. The commandant at the time was Okada, a second lieutenant in the Japanese army. I cannot adequately describe Okada other than to say that he looked like a typical Japanese, was heavy-set with a full face, and did not have a mustache. He could speak and understand a little English.
Can you identify the Japanese concerned with the beating of Waggoner?
Yes. Those included the following persons: Kamioka, the camp interpreter, who had formerly been in the hotel business in Tokyo and in Hawaii. Kamura, a clerk who was nicknamed the Whirling Dervish. Stosuji, a Japanese disciplinary sergeant who was nicknamed Ruby Lips. Stosuji had a baby face, full red lips, and wore glasses. Kawai, a guard who was nicknamed Harold Lloyd. Kawai wore horn-rimmed glasses, was about 70 inches tall, and was built and specialized in beating the prisoners. Tanaka, a guard who was nicknamed Fishface. Toyama, a guard, nicknamed Speedo. Toyama was nicknamed in this fashion because it was his favorite cry in urging the prisoners to hurry up with their tasks. Toyama may have had his picture taken after our liberation in company with another prisoner, one Sergeant Samuel B. Moody, ASN 110-24156, a former member of the 91st Bomb Squadron. The aforementioned Japanese all joined in the beating of Waggoner at some time or another. The Japanese made a practice of hitting or kicking him every time they passed his tied body, which lay on the ground in front of the camp guardhouse.